Good morning and warm welcome to all of you joining us for the 2022 Virtual National Recycling Congress. I'm Bob Geddert, the president of the National Recycling Coalition. For 44 years, NRC has been the voice of recycling and the common ground where recycling and waste reduction stakeholders have come together to exchange ideas and advance efforts nationwide. NRC's mission: NRC serves its members by developing and sharing best practices and policies that support sustainable materials management and the transformation to circular economy. NRC has long worked on recycling education for and with diverse stakeholders, government at all levels, businesses, large and small, universities and organizations, truly a coalition of members. NRC once hosted the annual in-person National Recycling Congress and exhibition that drew thousands to cities across the US, and we have been filling an important education and networking space in the past 3 years through virtual venues like today. NRC is a membership organization, and we hope you will join. Member benefits are many, and include a discounted rate for the NRC Congress and also have a voice and a vote in our elections. We invite members, but also guests, to attend our annual members meeting coming up at noon today to learn about new board member candidates and more. Voting for NRC Board of Director candidates begins at 2 p.m. Eastern Time today. Look for an email issued yesterday to NRC members from NRC Outreach that has your member ID. Look in your email today for your official NRC ballot to vote for your NRC Board of Directors. We want to thank those who have served as board members over the past year, and especially Dave Keeling, who served 2 terms and served as president of the board for over 2 of those years. NRC is pleased now to have 20 affiliate state recycling organizations representing about 6,000 members. We are thrilled that you are here with us. We really do have an incredible 2-day program in store, and you will find all the information to guide you through the session and links and speaker bios and networking sessions info throughout the At a Glance program linked to your Eventbrite ticket on our password protected webpage. We have so many to thank for this week's event, and we thank the many who have volunteered their time and expertise to organize, moderate, and present. Sharing your time and expertise to make this Congress successful benefits us all. We couldn't do any of this without our financial sponsors for the 2022 National Recycling Congress, including our GOAD sponsors: Institute for Scrap Recycling Industries, the Retract Connect, who has an exciting announcement to make tomorrow, is presenting during a session tomorrow, and who is hosting our Party Track networking events this afternoon during a lunchtime event. It's going to be a lot of fun, so don't miss it. We also thank our silver sponsors, including Balcony Resources, Paint Care, Bush Systems, SCS Engineers, Strategic Materials, and Mid-America Regional Council Solid Waste Management District. And we appreciate our bronze sponsors, including Payzone Systems, Race to Zero Waste, Zero Waste Associates, Carton Council, and I always like personally supporting this important event. We thank longtime media sponsors and partner Resource Recycling Magazine, and a special mention to Waste Advantage for a partnership this year. We also welcome our other members to the media joining us these 2 days. We can thank them personally and learn more about their work at this afternoon's Party Track event at 4 p.m. Eastern in Gathertown. Find details in your program. Recycling Coalition, Kirk, on their workshop. Collaborating partners, thanks to the NRC affiliates, well as the other state and regional organizations and related partners, have helped promote the Congress among their members and networks as collaborating organization partners. We want to say a special shout out to the team from Zero Waste USA, who is part of the technical team today. We are grateful for their time and encourage you to check out their exciting conference coming up at the end of the month. The conference planning team is made up of NRC board volunteers, paid contractors, and volunteers that developed the entire exciting program and brought it to fruition. Thanks to all who are visibly assisting, but also those helping behind the scenes and are invisible. And finally, thanks to all of you for taking the time to learn and be a part of this year's Congress. We are thrilled to have over 400 people registered for the two-day event. And today's rundown, check out your program. There's a great plenary sessions on the main stage, including this morning's keynote in a few minutes, and the state EPR for packaging legislation at 1 p.m. Eastern time. The rest of the day provides several current breakout sessions, and it will be difficult to decide just where you want to be. We'll be highlighting our sponsors throughout the day and giving you a few stretch breaks. We hope you enjoy the day, learn, catch up, and see some old friends and make friends with some new colleagues. At 4 p.m. Eastern time, let's grab a beverage of choice and meet at Party Track in Gather Town, a distinctive link in your program to wind down and enjoy a little time together to end day one. I now present to you Alec Cooley, a fellow NRC board member and a hardworking conference organizer who will be the moderator of our opening plenary. It's time for the show to begin.
Great. Thank you, Bob, for that introduction. We are excited for our keynote presentation today. We're going to be hearing in just a minute from Nina Shah, who is with the USPA and US EPA, and I'll give her the full introduction in a moment. But first, this is a way of setting up. NRC has worked for years closely with the US EPA on a number of different areas, including policy and funding, program development, other areas to advance recycling. So we are excited to have this Nina as part of our conference today and to continue that relationship. Looking forward, this is an exciting period with a renewed federal role in recycling between the new national recycling strategy, some of the funding opportunities that have come out of the recent infrastructure bill, as well as the acknowledgement of the important role of sustainable materials management in creating jobs and building our nation's infrastructure. So these are all very exciting issues looking forward. So before we jump right in, I want to just point out that we encourage folks to submit questions. We'll be using the chat function to submit those in writing, and then I'll look through those as the presentation goes by, and at the end of Nina's presentation, I will share some of those questions out loud. So I encourage you to go ahead and submit those at any point during this presentation. So to introduce Nina, Nina Shah is the acting director of the Resource Conservation and Sustainability Division of the US EPA. Nina has almost 30 years of environmental law and policy experience from work in the public and private sectors. She holds degrees from Duke University School of Law and the University of Michigan School of Natural Resources and Environment. Nina has worked as a corporate environmental attorney at several law firms. In addition to her current role, Nina has valuable experience from her work in both regulatory and voluntary spheres at the US EPA, having served in Region 3, the Offices of Water, Air, and Radiation, and Enforcement and Compliance Assurance, and in the immediate office of the Office of the Administrator and the Office of Policy. And with that, let me go ahead and welcome Nina onto the stage.
Wonderful. Thank you all so much. Thank you, Bob and Alec, for that lovely introduction. I am super excited to be here this week before America Recycles Day and the one-year anniversary of the bipartisan infrastructure law. As some of you may have heard me say before, I am completely amazed at what has happened in these last 2 years in terms of the sea change of what it is and the transformation of solid waste management law and statutory authority, but also as we look at EPA and the bipartisan infrastructure law, the American Rescue Plan funds, as well as the Inflation Reduction Act funds, we are at an incredible inflection point of how we think about what we do at EPA, how we do it, and what we might be able to achieve. We have historically been a regulatory agency, and we've been seen as such. And as we think about these funds, the Green Bank, all of the new grant authority that we have, the new Office of Environmental Justice and Civil Rights, it is really transforming how we do what we do. And I'm super excited to talk today about our little area of this. But one of the things that I will say that has been incredible in the last 2 years, because of the bipartisan infrastructure law and the Inflation Reduction Act, is the amount of cross-agency collaboration that we are doing, as well as cross-federal agency collaboration. All of these issues, some of which I will talk about, really require an all of federal government approach. And that is something that the Biden administration has really highlighted and focused on, not only as we think about climate and environmental justice, but really as we think about any of the major topics that we work on. So with that, I'm going to dive into the slide presentation. This is always the most challenging part. I have to share my screen, and then I have to put it into presenter mode so that you all see it. And hopefully you guys can see that. And then I'm going to adjust. So really quickly, I'm just going to give you an overview of the challenges and opportunities. This is not necessarily going to be new to you all, because you all have been on the front lines of this really for so long. We're going to talk a little bit about our circular economy strategy series, some of the issues there, and then we're going to talk about the bipartisan infrastructure law. And at the end, if we have a little time, I'll mention a couple of aspects of the Inflation Reduction Act that we are helping with at the agency, which I think is really, really exciting. So I want to put some of this work into context. And this is not necessarily the way that we have talked about our work.
Excuse me,
Can
Nina.
you hear me?
Just want to break in. We are not seeing your slides currently.
Okay, let me try that again. Let's see. Let me go to sharing our screen. There's always a two-step process, and maybe that's it. Is that it?
Perfect. Yes, now we see it. Thank you.
Excellent. Okay, so now, okay, I've got to go back. All right. So I'm going to put this work into context, which is really in thinking about why are we so interested in recycling, sustainable materials management. I mean, there's lots of reasons, but we also have some landfill challenges. And when we think about landfills, it's really a $50 billion sector or industry. We have 1,250 landfills that are permitted. And they're, beyond the cost of landfills, they have several challenges that we all know about, right? There's methane emissions that come from landfills, which is about 15% of US emissions, or the equivalent of 21 million passenger cars. There's potential for environmental contamination from landfills. We know that about a third are adjacent to environmental justice communities, and there are capacity challenges. Depends on where you are in the country, but we have about 200 that are expected to reach capacity and close within the next 5 years. So as we think about all of these issues, what are the things that we can do and that we can promote? I would also, it's always important to tie the climate and materials issue together. Often when we think about climate at the Environmental Protection Agency, we think about power plants and we think about transportation. But when we think about materials, there are the climate consequences of natural resources extraction and processing. So the International Resource Panel will tell us that about 50% of global climate change impacts come from extraction and processing, about 90% of global biodiversity loss and water stress, and 11% of global species loss. And as we take it a little bit further down into particular material streams that we are focusing on, we think about food and food waste and loss, which is a really important area now as we think about some of the climate impacts from this area, but also supply chain challenges and food shortages, not only because of the Ukrainian war situation, but also supply chain impacts for other reasons, COVID being one of them. So 1/3, I think it's important, I say this every time I talk, 1/3 of all the produced food in the US goes uneaten. And that is a terrible loss. 85% of the global greenhouse gas emissions associated with food waste occur during production and processing and distribution, and it comprises about 1/4 of municipal solid waste in landfills. And obviously, there are methane issues associated with that. When we think about another area, plastics, we know that plastic use and waste is a challenge. And by 2060, from the Global Plastics Outlook that the OECD recently put out, we know that plastic use is projected to triple, which means that plastic waste is also projected to triple. Half of that will likely be landfilled and less than 1/5 will be recycled. And we also know that plastic leakage is projected to double, which creates challenges in our aquatic environments. When we think about batteries, this is another area where there is incredible amount of innovation and investment going on. Right now in 2020, we use about 2.4 million tons of batteries in the US, but demand for batteries by 2030 is expected to increase sixfold, or triple by 2030 and increase sixfold by 2040, which is incredible. And a lot of this is due to electronic vehicle batteries, but we also know that there's going to be demand for lithium ion batteries as well, and the consumer batteries. Textile production and waste is also a challenge for us. 85% of textiles are thrown away or burned, so we need to work on that. And industry overproduction is often wasted to the about 30 to 40% per season. And fashion is the world's second worst offender in terms of water pollution, which is not something we always think about. And it contributes around 10% to carbon emissions. Congress and all of you all have been actively engaged. Really, when we think about how things changed because of the China sword policy, there was an incredible investment of thinking and effort into what can we do differently. Congress, of course, led the way, asking for us to create our national recycling strategy, which I'll talk about in a minute. But there have been additional asks of us in the appropriations language, including asks for more data and policy recommendations about how we might really improve or support recycling policy in the United States. And there's still more. I have never done more technical assistance to Congress in my 30 years than I have in the last probably 12 months. I feel like it's about weekly that I get asked some aspect about some aspect of our work from Congress. And it's fantastic to have that level of engagement. I know it means many of you all are engaged as well. And it's important that we have that dialogue across the US, including the states, localities, and industry. It will take all of us to work on these issues. And one of the things that we were asked to do in the FY21 appropriations language was to collect some data, which we have done, and we're getting ready to put out our report that'll share the results of that data. But one piece of it is looking at states that collect recycling data. So data is a hugely important issue. I'm sure Retract and others are going to talk about it during this meeting, but we were asked to look at it. We did put out a survey, and 54% of state respondents do not track the total amounts of materials collected in residential curbside recycling programs, and states and territories need more resources to collect and improve recycling data. So this is great information for us as we think about how we can support states and localities in this work. And as many of you know, and I've certainly talked about, and many of you were probably engaged in helping make this happen, the Save Our Seas Act 2.0 was a huge piece of legislation for us, and it did a number of things. And I go back to this all the time because I think it's so important. It became law in December of 2020, and it is what gave us the authority to issue grants for infrastructure for solid waste management improvements. And those were funded by the bipartisan infrastructure law, and I'll talk about that in a minute. In addition, it asked us to develop a strategy on plastics, as well as a series of reports on eliminating barriers to recycling, ways to spur markets for recycled plastic, and opportunities for innovative uses of plastic waste, as well as how to create less plastic waste. Additionally, it was the first time that we have defined a circular economy for the US. So we have the Save Our Seas Act to thank for that. So last year on America Recycles Day, we were able to release our National Recycling Strategy, part 1 of a series on building a circular economy for all. And it was the same day that the president signed the bipartisan infrastructure law. That is huge for us to have the vision and then funding to implement that has been an incredible boon to our program and to the way that we are thinking about our work. As you all know, I'm not going to spend a lot of time. The recycling strategy really focuses on municipal solid waste and stakeholder-led actions to create a stronger, more resilient, more equitable, and cost-effective recycling system, and acknowledges that recycling is just one part. And it's got 5 objectives, which continue to be important today, including, improving markets, increasing collection, reducing contamination, enhancing policies and programs, as well as standardizing measurement and increasing data collection. So we are hard at work on parts 1. Part 1, we got out the National Recycling Strategy. Parts 2 and 3, we're hard at work and we're close. So we're trying to get those over the finish line with food loss, waste, and organics, as well as plastics. As you might expect, these are very important issues across the federal government. And so we've had a lot of interest and a desire to weigh in on many parts of the federal government. So we are working through that. And we have started working on critical minerals and electronics as we think about the batteries work that we were asked to do as part of the bipartisan infrastructure law. And then built environment and textiles will hopefully come next year. That's my goal. So as I mentioned, as we think about the bipartisan infrastructure law and the national recycling strategy, it is really establishing a 10-year vision that embraces circularity, sustainable materials management, while addressing climate change and environmental justice. It is a huge opportunity that is literally redefining almost everything that we do in this division, as well as, in my opinion, it will change for the better our relationship with the states. Not that they were bad before. It's not that. It's just that we weren't as engaged as I think we could be as we think about these really challenging issues that we're all facing and that are going to take every one of us to put together. So I'm going to spend a little bit of time talking about the bipartisan infrastructure law, but I'm hoping that most of you already know this, but I can never guarantee that. So it's always good to talk about the 2 grant programs that were created. Save Our Seas created the first one, but they were both funded by the bipartisan infrastructure law. And the first one is the infrastructure grants for recycling. We got $275 million, $55 million a year for 5 years. And in some ways, that is a small amount in comparison to what some of our colleagues got in brownfields and Superfund, for example. But huge opportunity for us because we have never had the ability to give out these grants at a national level. We have given out small grants at a regional level, but we've never had a national program. So we are really thrilled to have such broad statutory authority that is permanent in the Save Our Seas Act. That's a really big deal. It means that we can potentially get funding beyond the 5 years of the bipartisan infrastructure law. And we are absolutely hoping that we prove the concept and the need, and that we can spend this money effectively. So the goals are to support improvements to recycling programs, post-consumer materials management, and waste management infrastructure. This is also a Justice 40 covered program, which means that 40% of the benefits need to accrue to communities that are disadvantaged, which is a term that CEQ has defined pretty broadly in the CJEST tool. That has a broad group of eligible entities, states, territories, the District of Columbia, tribes, and intertribal consortia. And the activities that the statute allows are pretty broad, and it's really improvements to local post-consumer materials management, including municipal recycling programs, and to assist local waste management authorities in making improvements to local waste management systems. So as we think about this language, and we're working closely with OGC and others, we read this pretty broadly, which is really fantastic, not only in the short term, but also as we think about this work going forward. The second grant program was a little bit more prescriptive in terms of what it included in the statute. It's the Recycling Education and Outreach Grant Program and Model Recycling Toolkit. This was $75 million a year, $15 million for the first, or $15 million a year for 5 years. This too is a Justice 40 covered program, and it is really to support education and outreach on consumer recycling and waste prevention. Similar eligible entities here, except that nonprofits and public-private partnerships are explicitly provided for in the statute, which is fantastic. There are a variety of eligible activities for the funds that were outlined in the statute, and they all go around how do we improve consumer access to information and education about recycling. But I point your attention to the last bullet, which is other activities determined appropriate to carry out by the administrator. So while we do have some very clear goals and projects for this, we also have a little bit more room given the last bullet. We have been putting together a toolkit that will be released as part of our grant programs, and it will have all of these different aspects in it, but we are also seeing the toolkit as really a version 1 and something that we will continuously improve as we start to learn more and share more information with the states and localities. And we're super excited about what we've been able to develop and how we can share that with all of you all. I'm going to touch briefly on batteries. This has been a significant issue. We got $25 million in the bipartisan infrastructure law to look at collection as well as labeling. This is not a grant program. I have to repeat that over and over and over again. In addition, DOE got like $8 billion. So they got a lot of money, but most of it is focused on very similar issues of recycling and collection. And so we are really excited about the collaboration that we have had with DOE thus far. And we think as we move forward, it's going to continue to be really important because their work is going to inform our work as we think about how the collection infrastructure, et cetera, moves forward in the future. So really broadly, we know why batteries are important. They certainly power many electronics and transportation systems. They also contain critical minerals, which is a huge, important focus for this administration, as well as others before, but in particular, this one, given the supply chain challenges. And when we think about recycling of batteries, it really does help with climate change. There's lots of benefits. I think one of the most important when I think about it is really avoiding the fires and creating a safe environment, not only for our recycling facilities, but also the people who work there. So we've got 2 aspects of the work. One is really thinking about collection best practices. How can we improve those collection points and what do we need to do, if anything, at a policy level? So we are thinking through and creating a draft report on that. Our first report isn't due until November of 23, so next year. And in addition, we are working on labeling guidelines. So really thinking about how can we label batteries better? And for this, you really have to think about who we are labeling for. Are we labeling for consumers? Are we labeling for people who work in manufacturing facilities, or are we labeling them for end of life? So there is a lot of stakeholder engagement that we will want to do in the coming year on batteries as we think about both collection and labeling, learning from many efforts that are already underway at the state level, as well as with organizations like Call to Recycle and others. I want to thank you all for those of you that responded to our requests for information. We put out one for each grant program as well as one for batteries. The information that we collected was amazing and hugely important to us. So I just want to thank you for your time and your effort and the thoughtfulness of those responses. We got over 400 responses to those requests, and they have been really helpful in informing what we do. And we will continue to refer to them as we progress these programs over time. The other thing I want to say is thank you for your engagement in all of our stakeholder efforts. We had over 110 meetings nationally, which was an amazing amount of work, but it was incredible. We reached over 4,700 people and organizations. And again, the comments that we received were really helpful for us as we thought about what we needed to include in our grant programs. And we had representation from the general public, from states, from municipal and local governments, tribal nations, nonprofits, and industry, and it was really incredible. I can say I'm really proud of the work that the team did here. We are, I think, held up often as a model for how we can do stakeholder engagement in the agency and for others. So thank you all for participating in those and making that such a thoughtful and informative process. So what's next? We really hope we can get our grants out soon. So fingers crossed, anything can happen as we, basically go through our final hurdles, but that really is where we are. So I am hopeful that we will get the grants out soon and that we'll be able to release our food waste and loss and plastics reports in draft soon. And then we will have a conversation at CES, the Consumer Electronics Show, in January on the batteries work to really start off some of those stakeholder engagement efforts as we think about collection and labeling and what we might be able to do. This is an important slide. We do a lot of consumer engagement and efforts to get the word out, not only about what we're doing, but also to share information and provide education. And so we want people to stay connected with us to make sure you learn about all of our funding opportunities that are coming out and preparing and training for the grant applications. We already have a website that gives you some information on things that you should be doing now to ensure that you have all the requisite like sam.gov and grants.gov accounts to be able to focus that. And then if you have any questions on any particular part of our bipartisan infrastructure law work, you can email these different emails. And the last thing that I'll say is that the Inflation Reduction Act work is really just getting underway, but we are very excited to collaborate with our friends in the Office of Chemical Safety and Pollution Prevention that are working on environmental product declarations and low embodied carbon labeling programs, as well as thinking about how to provide access to those materials. So there's a labeling program as well as a grant program. Our Office of Chemical Safety is the lead there, but they are doing incredible work across EPA as well as with CEQ and others. So super exciting opportunity to really think about a multi-attribute approach to labeling, which is something we've talked about for a really long time at the agency, but we're hopefully going to be able to really carry that out through this. a lot of work. A lot of work is going to be required to do this. And there's an amazing amount of pressure already, as there has been on all of us since the bipartisan infrastructure law came out. But we are all like thrilled. This is an incredible opportunity. It really is a transformational moment. And so thank you all. Please stay connected. There is more to come. And I really appreciate the opportunity to share with you all today and look forward to continue working with you as we transform solid waste management in this country. So thank you all so much.
Great. Thank you, Nina. That was fantastic. There truly is a lot of exciting stuff going on, and many of us have been in this industry for many years, and we've been looking for more of this federal leadership, and so definitely exciting opportunities.
Yay! Well, thank you. Thank you.
So we've got a number of questions that have come in, and
Okay.
yeah, so stay on for you. And just a reminder for everybody else, go ahead. If you have additional ones, we'll get to as many as we can as we're going through. But let me kick off with a question that Elizabeth had asked earlier on when you were talking about the reporting and data. She made the observation that California does a lot of mandatory local reporting, but we didn't see them listed on the yes category. Do you have any more knowledge or background on that?
The yes category of,
I think of states reporting.
oh, interesting. I'd have to go back and look at that slide. It's probably just an error, but we do recognize that California has done a lot. So I'll look back at that slide.
Gotcha. Okay. Andrew had a question of when can we expect the model recycling program toolkit to be released?
It'll be released with the grants, at least in version 1. Although, like I said, we really do expect that will improve over time as we get more information and share more and create more. To say that we have been stretched to the max to create these programs is an understatement. For those of you who've been in federal government, but honestly, I'm just going to repeat. It is so exciting to be able to build a new program. We very rarely get that opportunity. And so to be able to build both of these programs and set up that legal infrastructure has really been such an honor. And I'm really proud of the work that we've done. But the toolkit will go out with the grants, and then it will just continue to improve it over time.
Fantastic. Great. Caleb had a question, which actually is near and dear to my own heart. As far as the new national recycling strategy, is there anything planned specific to behavior change, initiatives getting people trying to actually move people's behavior?
Yes, we have been doing a lot of thinking about behavior change, not only in our division, but also in the agency as well, because so many of these challenges really are about behavior. If you're thinking about batteries or food waste or recycling, right, it's all about behavior. So we do have some information on that, which we're excited about, that'll be in the toolkit. And there's likely to be more as we learn more. And as we've been trying to bring more of those folks into the agency. And this is something, right, that's been started years ago with Cass Sunstein and the Nudge. He wrote Nudge, right, which is really all about behavior change and how do you do that effectively in the government. So I'm excited that we're finally going to be able to hire some people. I know folks in our office of the Chief Financial Officer have worked really hard to do that, but I'm pretty sure we're going to get some on board, which will help us as well. You're muted.
Thank you. That's great. Cindy is asking, how is the EPA tackling micro and nanoplastics? Is there a specific element to the strategy for those microplastics?
So this is a great question. I will say that plastics has been a really incredible issue for us. We've been working on it really since I came into this job in January and before with the Office of Water. So the plastic strategy will have a small component on that. the Office of Water and our Office of Research and Development are really taking the lead here. But I'll also mention a couple of other things that are happening. The National Academies of Science is having a meeting tomorrow that is going to bring together a bunch of industry folks as well as agencies to talk about this issue. And then Assistant Secretary Medina at the State Department is leading the U.S. effort in the international negotiations on plastic. So there is a lot of focus on this issue, and CEQ just hired somebody as well to work on it. So there is more to be engaged. And really, when we have these meetings at the agency, it involves almost every single office. And while not every office is necessarily doing a ton, everybody's engaged. And that's when we recognize the opportunity that we have and the challenge of these issues. It really does go across all of the offices. So we are focused on that. I don't know. I don't have like dates on when things are coming out, but I know ORD and OW have that in their sites.
Fantastic. Great. Good. From Maggie, we have a question. Is there any predetermined size of the grants in general terms? And how much total each type of applicant will get?
Yes, so
industry or nonprofits, et cetera.
Sure. I can't talk about any of that because there, of course, anything can change until they're final. But in our grant program design, we did have to identify that. So that information will come out when the grants are announced.
Okay. Great. Michelle had a question coming back to the topic of batteries, specifically, and pointing out, she uses as the example with some of the many states, the way they regulate cannabis require that any waste related to it has to go to the landfill, including vape pens, other things with lithium ion batteries. And so her question is there any aspect of EPA's new regulatory authority that can override that or somehow impacts the ability to keep some of these items out based on
Sure.
state?
Just to be clear, we don't have new regulatory authority. We were given the money, which is great. And it's really to look at and work with DOE on, an EPR framework. But it's just that it would be a framework, and any other policy ideas that we have, we would have, if they required regulatory authority, we would need to request that from Congress. So it's a big lift if we were to go down that path. But we are basically going to be researching that and getting stakeholder feedback on those issues. We do know that vape pens are, one of those tricky objects that, have batteries in them, like so many things. And so we're going to have to think really hard and talk to all of you about how to really address this challenge, because vape pens are just one example.
Yeah, they're tough.
Yeah.
Another battery related question is just specific to EV batteries. Are they included within the collection recycling aspects?
They are. So, when you think about the materials usage, obviously the size of EV batteries, they're huge in some cases. I think the largest is like 2,000 pounds, which is a ton, which I think is in the Hummer. And so the issues and challenges, right, are different than consumer. But as we think about this issue and the money that we received, we're really trying to be broad and thinking about not only the consumer, but also EV batteries. And in fact, when we met with DOE earlier this week, and they really think about them in three ways: consumer batteries, transportation batteries, and then stationary batteries. So if you think about the use of batteries that might be for power or a backup generator, that kind of thing. Well, not a generator, but a backup battery. And so we're going to be, we're looking at all of them. And so is DOE, which is great.
Got it. Great. Just a couple more questions, and then we're getting close to our break. But we have one here from Tony. Many industries include in their zero waste metrics thermal destruction. We understand that zero waste is related to circular economy and resource conservation. thermal destruction should not be included, is he's suggesting, it's his opinion, with that should not be included with the zero waste policy. But do you think US EPA could establish a more clear definition, including what is considered, what is not considered zero waste?
Oh, that's interesting. So I have to say, we know that states are focused more on zero waste than we have been at this point. But we're interested in learning more and thinking about this more. And as we work more on, the definitions around all of these issues, I'm certain that one will come up, but we'll see. And I know that it will require a lot of communication. So, more on that as we get there.
Great, good. Then another question here specific to end markets and just market development. Is there a specific aspect of the new strategy that focuses on market development?
We do have that focus, although we recognize that is something that we're going to need help on. We just had a meeting with Detroit and thinking about, they're going to, I guess, Waste Management is going to open a new MRF. So thinking about how are they also thinking about end markets for those recyclables that are come from that MRF. So I think this is there's great organizations out there that are already doing this work, but we know it will require more communication. Something that we are working on that we're excited to get out hopefully soon. We've had a lot on our plate, is an infrastructure map. So looking across the United States, looking across all of the different infrastructure pieces, locations that we have for recycling and materials management, so that we can really identify those opportunities for end markets. And we're excited to get that out. And, in addition to one that looks at food waste, we'll have a new version of our excess food opportunities map that'll come out as well.
Fantastic. Great. Good. Well, we're at the end of our time for this session. Nina, again, I want to thank you very much. This is great to hear what the EPA is doing. If folks want to stay more engaged, is there a way that they can get added to notification lists or any guidance for?
So that last slide where it says stay connected, that'll take you to a page where you can input your information and you will start getting all of our announcements that come out. I will also say a couple of things. Number one, grants.gov is your friend. We have grant money that we are super excited about, but there are other grant programs from the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law as well as the Inflation Reduction Act that could also be utilized for the types of solid waste activities that you may have. So I would encourage you to watch those, and EPA.gov and our Office of Public Affairs, they put out a website and our press releases. So you want to watch our press releases too. The other thing that I'll say is DOE, right? DOE got a lot of money. Their money typically goes to research and development and more towards, building and more industry focused. But the amount of money is overwhelming. So people are going to have lots of options as they think about how they might want to fund certain activities that fall under the eligible activities of these programs. It's an amazing time.
And an exciting one.
Yes.
Thank you again, Nina. This is
Thank you.
Fantastic.
Really appreciate it. Thank you all. Have a great rest of your session. Bye.
Great. So for the rest of us, just point out we are going into a quick break right now. We want to encourage, we are going to invite a couple of our sponsors. We're going to play some videos, just tell a little bit more about what they're doing. So we encourage you to stick around and watch these here in this main room. Or if you need to take a quick bio break or get some emails, go ahead and do that. We will restart again at noon. So in just 10 minutes with our first round of concurrent sessions. So you can see here, I've listed up the specific sessions that are coming up, including the NRC members meeting, which will be in room C. So if you go back to the web interface that the email sent you to for the programs, that's where you can click through to find the different breakout rooms. And then following that, we'll have another plenary at 1 p.m. Eastern time. In the meantime, thank you again for joining us for this morning session, and I'm going to hand it over for our sponsor spotlight. Thank you.
Thanks, Alec. Hi, my name is Hannah Zuckerman, communications writer and editor for ISRI. ISRI is the voice of the recycling industry. It's a trade association that represents approximately 1,500 member companies in the US and around the world that process, broker, and industrially consume recycled materials, including the full range of ferrous and non-ferrous metals, paper, plastics, glass, textiles, rubber, and electronics. Please let me turn your attention now to our video about the importance of recycled materials and their role in our daily lives. Thank you.
Josh, Emma, and Oliver. They grow our food, run our hospitals, and develop our digital infrastructure. Their equipment, supplies, the tools they use came from recycled materials. This combine here was made in part from a recycled washing machine. The high-quality metal that makes up Emma's stethoscope came from a recycled car, and Oliver's computer was once an outdated cell phone. The recycled materials industry provides a renewable source of high-quality materials for the everyday items and essential infrastructure we depend on. High-quality materials that keep our supply chains running. Materials needed to build our roads, vehicles, and even our coffee makers. The more recycled material that gets reused means less resources that are wasted. In fact, every new item made from recyclable material is one less item that would have used our scarce natural resources. With recycling, we can get raw materials locally and securely with less dependence on imports. And the recycled materials industry is continuously innovating to recycle more material more efficiently, using artificial intelligence and optical scanners to recycle items that were once considered hard to recycle. From our farms to our hospitals and across our communities, recyclable materials keep our supply chains running and provides us with the tools we need for the future. Learn more about recycling at isri.org.
Virtual, most of the time you don't even get breaks, but just funny to have a 10-minute break.
I think I'm next. Mickey Berry from Strategic Materials. We're the nation's largest glass recycler with nearly 50 locations in the US, Canada, and Mexico. Our glass is used in food and beverage containers, reflective materials, fiberglass insulation, and abrasives. We continue to grow and process glass from curbside drop-off centers and window manufacturers. Our goal is to sustain glass recycling for the future and continue to direct as much glass from landfills as possible. Again, my name is Mickey Berry from Strategic Materials Incorporated.
Great. I think we're all set now. We're going to take the next few minutes for a break, and then we'll meet folks in the breakout rooms in about 6 minutes.